Hey, I'm James. You don't know me, and you don't care. We're talking about video games. Halo 5. A polarizing title in the Halo series, for mostly its campaign mode, but you've heard everyone's opinions on that. You don't need mine. I'm not talking opinion here. I'm talking cold hard facts. The very same cold hard facts in the thumbnail. This thumbnail. You slept on Halo 5's Forge. I mean, you probably did. If you didn't, and you're just watching this because you know I'm right, that's cool. My point is that the standout mode went under the radar for some pretty annoying reasons, and for some pretty good reasons. With Halo Infinite on the horizon, we should look at why Halo 5's Forge was the best in the series, and what Halo Infinite can do to improve that. Post-launch, in the far-off nightmare world of 2015, Halo 5 launched in October with a shocking lack of Forge mode, a strange reduction from previous titles, which had been including Forge mode since 3, ODST Wars and Wars 2, Spartan Assault, and Spartan Strike do not count. Forge would later drop as a stepping stone on a roadmap. Yay. For the most part, this roadmap meant the addition of old modes and armors and weapons via monthly additions to the rec system's already crowded pool of items. Wow, I'm not sounding super positive, am I? But this also meant Forge got a few more months in the digital cooker, the machine maker, I can't think of any other comparisons. Point is, Forge was able to launch with a free delay, and whether or not Forge was always going to drop in September, or whether it was always delayed, we may never know. Or maybe we will, but I didn't Google it. The point I'm making is that it doesn't matter. Forge, coming late, was excellent, actually. The fact that it came late was excellent as well. Forge was... you get it. It gave Halo 5 a second life, essentially. Halo 5's Forge is by far the most comprehensive, complete, and powerful versions of Forge that has ever been released in a Halo game. Okay, so, I like it, and it sounds like I think it can do no wrong, yes? Well, here's a cliff we have to fall off in order to understand why people would sleep on Halo 5's Forge. The mode where you can get all kinds of awesome trick shots recorded to... wait, hold on, I'm getting some information just now. Microsoft replaced Theater. Well, kind of. Theater is still in Halo, it's a staple of the franchise, just not as much as Forge. Theater's old functionality was to record those cool trick shots and you getting run over by a ghost or whatever. Microsoft added a record that button to Xbox and made Theater redundant. But wait, some people still use Theater for things, you say. Yeah, Rooster Teeth really is still making RVB, huh? And mostly nobody else is doing anything of note. Machinima isn't exactly a field that's super popular anymore, and the advent of the internet and the conclusion of the better written parts of RVB mean that anyone trying to break into this method of content creation would have better luck doing anything else. But wait, is Machinima's decline caused by Theater's decline, or is Theater's decline caused by Machinima's? The point is, Theater is glitchy and not as good. Why does that relate to Forge? Machinima again. You have the most powerful tool to create settings for Machinima, and one of the weaker tools to record it. Strange foot movements, camera quirks, bodies, and weapons not always appearing consistent through gameplay versus recording. Machinima had a lot of little tiny issues that made it more difficult to work with. Also, like I said, almost nobody is doing Machinima anyway, so, there's that. If nobody's using a mode, why would 343 put effort into polishing it? Halo is such a large game that comes out not as often as some of its worst competitors. I mean Call of Duty. Call of Duty is disappointing every year. You know it's disappointing every year. Make your own video essay on that one. I'm here to rant about a different mode. This was a tangent. Is there a difficulty curve? Back on topic, the other problem with Halo 5's Forge was how it was different. Halo 3, Reach, and 4, and MCC worked with similar principles and controls. Halo 5 abandoned those controls in favor of controls that would be more effective and powerful, if you learned them. Now, this is a piece of debate, thing, really. Yeah. Some people never had the time to learn an entire new system, preferring to just jump in and drop some easy-to-place weapons and make a base out of 5 items and call it a fight. Heck, I even remember doing that in Reach. But now, in 5, we don't have any of those pre-made structures, even though you could just browse the prefab section for community-made content. No. Now we have cubes? Squares? I can get squares in other games 343. What is this? I am kidding, and my point here is that, while nowhere near any sort of consensus among fans, there has been some criticism that 5's Forge is simply too dense. That criticism is unfounded. Forge should be, and currently is, about letting the community create complex and impressive maps with as much of Halo's assets as we can get. And as we draw ever nearer to the singularity of forgeable AI, Forge has to get more complicated. Is it harder? Yes. Does that mean it contains more features that allow for more complicated game types, maps, and whatever else you could want? Also yes. Forge has to evolve to stay relevant. If Infinite launches with the equivalent of Halo Reach's Forge settings, 343 would have to work twice as hard to keep the game alive post-launch. Now, you can argue that a good game would keep itself alive, and I agree with that notion. But good games keep themselves alive because of the community, not in spite of it. Look at Cube Game Mind Build. It's only alive because people keep creating things for Cube Build Mind Game. Servers, mods, texture packs, it's all important to keeping a game as rudimentary as one based around squares alive. Forge lets the community be creative. It's going to get more complicated if it wants to improve. There was the thesis of this bit. Complicated stuff is good, actually, or whatever. But now for some addendums. When I say complicated is good, I don't mean at the expense of approachability. I want Forge to be as powerful as it can be, but I would never say no to an easier or throwback version of the mode's controls to be included. Halo 5's palette of items with controls as simple as Reach or 3 would be an excellent way to introduce the mode, though the advanced controls could still use a dedicated tutorial. Addendum 2. When I mentioned the forgeable AI singularity, I just mean the community has yammered on and on about that for so long that, reasonably speaking, 343 knows we want them. They are not confirmed for Infinite, and I don't expect them to be there, I just expect them to be in a future title. But forgeable AI would require an entirely new in-depth system just for scripting things like dropships and pathfinding. And easy-to-learn Forge mode and scripting don't really mesh because AI is a whole different bag that requires its own addressment. Addressment? Google Docs thinks that's not a word, but let's Google now. I already yammered on about how the delay was good, so at this point in the video I was gonna do it again, but I'm not like a writer or a script boy, so I'm leaving this bit in, and here's a picture of my cats. Now, I would say it's the objectively best Forge mode, but the word objectively is starting to annoy me and everyone else with a brain. Plus, there's merit to ye old things like Reach's color palette and 3's lack of phased objects. Okay, I'm being rude. There are merits to the older ones. Like I said, they were a hell of a lot easier to pick up and learn. 1. Servers. We hate them. As more and more games are given that lovable only online restriction, we can only hope the same doesn't happen for Forge. Thus far, it seems like we're in the clear. Halo 5's own Forge mode, after downloading it at least, could be played offline. 2. Halo 3. Halo Infinite is a throwback. I don't think 343 would do a U-turn after making their most incredible and cool Forge mode yet, but I do worry they may just dumb it down a little. Point is, I hope it stays as a dedicated map-making mode. And I have to stress this part, I am not the kind of person who says Dark Souls shouldn't have an easy mode. I'm saying I hope the core features of Halo 5's Forge remain intact and with depth, and I would welcome an easier version of it, especially if it means more people could learn it and create cool stuff. So, my fear here is that I hope they don't dumb everything down in order to avoid adding an easy mode. Which is, honestly kind of a ridiculous worry, right? When something has depth, character, and storytelling, they shouldn't just abandon, I've slipped into a bit that's about Halo 4 and the depth it had, and how Halo 5's mostly sacks Chief's character, which he desperately needed if Halo was going to evolve into the modern era and stand out from generic shooter characters, which are a dime a dozen. Why did you sleep on Halo 5's Forge? Maybe you tried it, and it just wasn't your cup of tea. Maybe you would have tried it had it been in at launch. Hell, as someone who was not a fan of Halo 5's campaign, I nearly didn't stick around for Forge. This was not a video to insult you, dear viewer. If it was, I would have brought much more personal insults to the table. This was a video where I get to lament the fact that previous titles' Forge modes had so much usage and mileage, while this very good and cool one seems to have gathered dust. Or maybe it's because the last mainline Halo game came out 5 years ago, and the reason Forge gathered dust is because sometimes people move on. Listen, I've done the research. Nothing released in September of 2015. This should have been the only thing to do. Oh, I get it. You didn't have time for Halo 5 Forge because you were playing Hatsune Miku Project Mirai DX.